We do, Sophie's going to share her screen, and we have all the images on our website, and we'll do a slide presentation, and each artist will have a few minutes to talk about their classes and their work. So Sophie, I'll turn it over to you right now.
Okay, great. So we do have a number of upcoming classes that will be available in the spring and the summer. I'm not going to read them out one by one just yet, because each of our faculty members will get to share pieces that they're presenting tonight, and they will talk about the classes that they're offering this spring and summer. But if you have any kids or know of any children and are thinking of summer camps for the summer, we do have 3 offerings, one by Sora DeVore, one by Mac Cosgrove Davies, and one by Karen Keaton. And those are a great summer option for kids between the ages of, I believe, 8 and 13 or 16 on the higher end. So think about that. And as we go through the talk, I will also drop the class names into the chat, so you can hold on to that and wait until registration is open and sign up for some of these great classes. So let's move forward. Gail, do you have anything else, or Karen?
No, I was just going to do a little bit of a spiel about the summer classes and the new teachers, not new to Photoworks exactly, but Steve Greenberg is offering a new class. And we have Michael Snyder coming as a visiting artist to do a photojournalism class. And Matt Cosgrove Davies is teaching for teens also. And Sora and I have each more than one class.
I just wanted to take a minute and thank Tom Slider, who has just sent me an email that he can't make it here tonight, because he did a terrific job hanging the show. It was just so many different pieces and different frames, and it looks just spectacular. The gallery really looks great. I hope you can all get over there and see it. So I guess now we can start our slideshow. Is everybody here?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's go for it. So I'll be sharing my screen, everyone. Okay. Can everyone see?
That looks great.
Great. So unfortunately, I don't think Sue Bloom could make it tonight, but she offers iPhone photography classes, and I'll read a bit of her description. The iPhone has become a major part of my image gathering tools. It is convenient and lightweight. The quality and usability have vastly improved. I can use apps as my digital darkroom and even shoot in RAW mode. It can collage, layer, and add textures and lighting effects. In short, it is a bona fide camera and can produce gallery-worthy prints. This little computer and processor is simply amazing. My photos in this portion of the show are derived from iPhone images and are examples of my artwork that began with a simple snap of my phone. So we'll go through Sue's. She has 4 photos.
This is a grouping of 4 small images that are hung together.
They're really gorgeous.
They really are.
Mm-hmm. Moving right on. Richard?
Hi, how are you? I'm glad to be offering classes again at Photoworks. I hope we in-person classes, so I hope that's going to fly, because I love helping people find the easy way to do things. I enjoy that. There's no reason that anybody should have to slog through doing things the hard way when we can pass on our knowledge about how to do things the easier way. I've got 3 classes coming up. One is really an introduction to digital photography, which goes over all your camera, all the features on your camera, so you can get a better control of what you're doing. Although I have to say, cameras are so automated that it is difficult but not impossible to shoot a poorly exposed picture. This one here I shot with a Canon 10D a while ago. By the way, the other class that's relevant here is the Introduction to Lightroom and Photoshop class. The third class is one for developing a personal style, and you weave them all together, and there are different steps for creating an image. You have to see the image, you have to actually take the image, then it's how you realize it, what you do to edit it in Lightroom or Photoshop to make it look the way you want it to look. And then of course it's how you're displaying it either visually on a computer or as a print hanging in a gallery. There we discussed the rules of composition, how to get the look that you want in Photoshop and Lightroom. And in developing a personal style, I go into how you figure out how to make your pictures more recognizable as your pictures rather than someone else's. It involves working with possibly trying to copy the styles of someone you admire already, blending it in with what you like to do, and out comes your stuff, your style. I think it's exciting. I've run across many new photographers or people who are new to photography who end up having a marvelous eye for photography. I just got an email yesterday from a woman who was in several of my classes, and she was asking about the Developing a Personal Style class. I'm really thrilled to have her in the class. I hope she can make the in-person class. Here we have Stonehenge. I'm with Sue. Now this was shot on my wife's film camera with Kodak Gold 200 color film, which is one of the worst films you can possibly use to scan and get anything good out of it. But fortunately, it was a beautiful day. There were beautiful clouds, and the print worked out like I like it. I hope to show the class the original of what this looked like, because there's a dramatic difference. I just get excited about what you can do with where you start and where you end up that makes it look like one of your own pictures. And you can do that, as Sue said, with an iPhone, which I've used plenty of times, a 10D, an inexpensive film camera. Believe me, I've had plenty of expensive film cameras and digital cameras, but you just have to get there and take the picture. So I hope to see a lot of folks there. This was gorgeous. I mean, the site was gorgeous, so I'm thrilled to have been able to capture this picture.
Thanks, Richard. And Joe.
Did I miss anybody? I got lost for what seemed like 5 or 10 minutes and couldn't get back in, and then I finally came back. Was there anybody before Richard that I missed?
No.
Oh, okay.
Sue Bloom.
Oh, Sue Bloom, sorry.
I'm sorry about that too. I wasn't sure what I was expected to say, what I might say, and I thought maybe I'd just take a minute, a really brief minute, to just say something about where I came from and how I came to photography, and then a few words about the class that I'm offering. I started out as a painter. My undergraduate work was in studio painting. This was in the late 50s, early mid 60s, kind of at the peak of abstract expressionist painting. And I was very, very strongly influenced by that whole movement and by a great deal of the artwork that was kind of leading the field of art. There were some interesting contrasts. Minimalism was happening at the same time that painters like Franz Klein were painting immense blobs on canvas and espousing meaning. And I was touched and moved by all of that. So I think if you wouldn't probably think of that right off the top if you saw my work, but if you spent time with it, you'd see that I really was influenced by those people. And I still am to this day, which is to say that my own personal influences in the medium of photography, more often than not, are painters, occasionally dancers, and others in the arts. And I do look at a lot of photography as well. Somewhere along the way, I picked up a camera. I think at the time teaching, well, I wasn't teaching, I was studying painting at the Corcoran, which interests me just because I ended up back at the Corcoran after many years, and I taught fine art photography there for 35 years. And then the last 5 or 6 years, I've taught a class here at Photoworks. I'm not sure what to say, but briefly, a thought or two about my work. This is probably very typical of what I do. I'm thinking of Minor White, who once made a comment. What was that line? Well, he spoke of looking at things for what else they are, things for what else they are. And it was just a recognition that a single photograph could be the accumulated event of many different layers of reality, many different ways of looking at photographs. And I'm very committed to the use of the black. You were just talking about this. There's a combination that I use, which is a matte, Epson matte bright paper, which has a really deep charcoal black that I had attempted for years to achieve with film and silver, and I could never do it. And discovering this combination with digital materials, it's a bright white, and it's a matte surface, and the black is every bit as deep as this. I'm not so interested in information in my own work, but I'm very interested in sensation. And this is a good example. There's no context here. There's no background. I don't do a lot of Photoshop work. I'm not particularly adept at it. But if there was perhaps a duck in the corner here, I would have taken that out and cleaned it up. But so I do a little bit of editing around the edges, but I don't do very much. I'm interested in the fact that this picture looks as if perhaps these leaves might be floating in space because you can see a sense of a shadow beneath them. And rationally, that's not happening, but somehow visually it's been made to happen. I was actually kind of taken by the fact that all of these leaves, or most of them, seem to be turned so they're oriented towards the center, towards the core. That was just an event that happened that I had nothing to do with, but I was struck by it. I'm also interested here in the dialogue between the leaves, the lilies, and the rectangle frame of the image itself. And it's almost as if the rigid, hard background collapsed and formed this new shape out of the four sides. So it has a lot of meaning, and I've been thinking especially about how photographs function in the modern world today that seems to be falling apart almost on a daily basis, and wondering how photography and how art fits into those kinds of concerns. This picture for me, I can't tell anybody else what it is for them, but for me, it is a bit of a celebration. It's almost as if stars have convened together or some other light source. And it's a very affirmative, positive experience. The other photograph that I offered appears to have raindrops. Is that easy to find, Sophie?
It's the next
Okay.
one.
Yeah. I'm really excited. I said this, but even more so about the black, which can function either as a void, it can function as the corner of a building. There's something really beautiful about the raindrops. I was thinking just earlier today how the drops remind me of Asian calligraphy, and how often writing in some Asian countries is vertical instead of horizontal. It's a very delicate and beautiful picture to me. My wife was looking at it earlier, a few days ago, and said it made her think of sorrow and weeping. And I was, strange to say, I was quite happy that I could somehow evoke a sense of weeping in a photograph. I frequently weep at music, and I often wish I could cause that to happen with photographs, and it doesn't very frequently. The class I'm offering is the same one I've offered over the last 5 or 6 years. It's called Say What You Mean, and that title implies that it is a content-driven class. And I have a feeling that most, if not all, of my colleagues tonight are going to be talking about content issues, because that's the ultimate endpoint with our photography. The class is set up for 3 hours every Saturday morning, 10 to 1. There's a maximum limit of 8 students, and that's because my goal for this class, the whole purpose of this class, is to offer every student, every participant, a hopefully usable critique every week. And I offer that to every student in the class. And it's even pushing it a little bit with 3 hours for 8 people, but that does work. There are no lectures, no assignments in this class. It's assumed that participants are at least familiar with the fundamentals, basic camera operation, and image editing software of some kind, whether it's Photoshop or Lightroom or any of a dozen others. So that our attention in the critique can go almost entirely to content. I think that's really all I want to say, except that I think that Photoworks is offering a number of in-person one-to-one classes. And I just want to mention that this class and its repeat in spring and summer is going to be entirely online with Zoom for reasons that some are obvious and I don't need to explain others. Sophie?
Great. Thank you, Joe. Thanks for sharing. We're going to move on to the next person, Mac.
Oops. Let me turn my video back on. Okay. Hi, I'm Mac Cosgrove Davies. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, sounds
Okay.
great.
Yes.
Good, good.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. So at Photoworks, I tend to teach historic photographic processes because that is my passion. So that is what I have coming up for the summer. And in particular, I'm really excited this summer to be doing a couple of classes for teens. These would be camps. The really exciting thing for me, the first one I'll be doing is called, well, it focuses on pinhole photography and then going from there to cyanotype. The cool thing about this is that we will be able to start with a very simple camera. You can make a pinhole camera out of a lot of stuff, so we're going to have fun kind of working through that. But once the camera is made, then making photographs, making negatives is a pretty straightforward process. And then you can take the negatives and print them with cyanotype. Cyanotype is also a very straightforward process. So during the course of the week, we will be working our way through this. And by the end of the week, these students should be able to, they'll not only have the equipment, the pinhole cameras, but more importantly, they'll have the skills to take this where they want to. I should have mentioned that cyanotype is among the historic processes, the alternative processes. It is one of the easiest and also one of the least expensive. So the budget is not an issue for this. What we're seeing, the first one here we're seeing is a cyanotype made with a pinhole camera. And you can see that you can do quite a lot with a pinhole camera, and it comes out just beautifully in cyanotype. So that's where we're heading with the first class. Taking cyanotype, yes.
Quick question for you. You're doing these cyanotypes, you're printing the cyanotypes from negatives you have made in camera with other material, or are you making the cyanotypes in camera?
Thank you, Scott. We would be making the negatives with photographic paper, with black and white paper that you would otherwise be printing, making black and white prints with, and using those negatives to print our cyanotypes. But thanks for the clarification. So this is a completely analog process to build on Scott's question. That's not the only way you can make negatives large enough to shoot to print cyanotypes or other alternative processes, but it's a very nice way to do it because with very little in terms of equipment, you can produce images such as this. So that's the first class. The second class will be focusing on, again, on cyanotype, but taking it further than simply cyanotypes on paper, which are already pretty great things to do. Cyanotypes can be done on a variety of materials, on regular paper, on vellum paper, which is translucent, so it looks kind of like a slide. You can do cyanotypes on glass or wood or other media. So depending on where the students want to go with that, we may head in that direction. You can also take the cyanotypes you've made and do some fun stuff with them. You can, since they're on paper, it's very easy to apply art materials, paints, colors with colored pencils or other things to either, make it look realistic or to make it look expressive as you wish. So this will be a class of exploration. So those are the two classes I'll be focusing on. The second image I've done is saying a little bit more about where I've been going personally with my photography lately. And that is, this is a carbon print. So that's a different historic photographic process, also non-silver, that is printed with a wet plate collodion negative. And this has been something I've just started with this past summer and something I'm having a great deal of fun with. Right now, I'm actually working on creating the equipment to make this work. I don't know if you can see this Kodak 4A, which has been modified for a roll or a ground glass back, so I can shoot images with this. And I'm looking forward to taking this one out in the spring when it's time to go out and do our wet plate again. So that's what I'm up to, and I'm looking forward to seeing some students this summer.
Your collodion won't freeze.
Not during the summer.
Mhm. Thank you, Mac. Next is Alec.
Got to come off mute first, right? Hi, everyone. So my photography is focused on digital work. And maybe we could move forward to the first slide. There we go. And, I'm interested in natural shapes, sensuous shapes, but I'm also interested in how a photograph can be taken from an impulse that you had at the time that you took the photograph to take it someplace else, make a new experience from it. And this photograph is a favorite example of mine. And this relates to my classes because I teach mainly Lightroom, which is, what I would recommend for anyone who's interested in digital photography. And almost always there's something that can be done with a photograph that brings it closer to what you originally had in mind when you took the photograph. And it's, while people tend to think of photography as something that represents what the human eye can see, the reality is that that's actually not how human vision works. And that part of the challenge of photography is to bring forward the experience that we had at the time that we made the shot. So in my classes, I'm teaching in the summer, I'm teaching an introduction to Lightroom, which will give you a good foundation in the software. The class is taught with both a mix of my showing how things work and also letting the students show their photographs and work on them in the class so that everybody can learn together, but also so that there's a hands-on element to it. I teach all my classes on Zoom because I'm going to be honest with you, when I taught them at Photoworks, I was just projecting an image on a screen from my computer. So Zoom works great. In this case, in the spring, I'm teaching a Lightroom 2 class, which it would be for people who've taken an introductory Lightroom class or have gotten some feeling for the program and just want to continue to expand their skill set. And I'll be honest, Lightroom is not a program that you learn, in one class. So I thought it was important for Photoworks to have, a step beyond that, and also give people a chance to catch up on some of the newer developments, which have been quite wonderful, but takes some learning. Why don't we move forward to the next photograph if we can? So I included this one in the show, partly because, we lost Mark Power recently, and this photograph directly came out of a course that I took with Mark at Photoworks, where he said, these are kind of interesting images. Why don't you think about putting them together in a group? And, the next thing you know, I had this series that really worked well together, were wonderful fun to do, and glad to have it in the show. That'll do it for me.
Great.
Nice, nice.
Alex.
Thank you. Scott? Let's see, I think you're still muted.
Oh,
Oh, can't hear you. You're muted.
okay.
Good.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Well, I'm Scott Davis. I've been teaching at Photoworks for, about 11 years now, I think. Tico was the one who brought me in because of my interest in antique and historic processes. And much like Mac, I have a real interest in historic ways of working. My particular area of interest and expertise is platinum palladium printing. It's a newer than cyanotype. It was invented in the 1880s, but the beauty of it is has such a really rich, long tonal scale. You can make these incredibly beautiful, detailed images, and it's also one of the most permanent photographic processes out there. Basically, as long as the paper underneath the image survives, the image will survive. So my upcoming class is actually coming up in February, in about 2 weeks. It's starting is I'm doing a class on still life in the studio, and I will be doing it in person at Photoworks. We're keeping the numbers limited to deal with the potential issues of public health and so on, and also just to give people enough time to work on ideas in class. Since we are in this, pandemic environment still, still life is something that a lot of people might want to explore because it's something you can do at home without having models or going out into public or dealing with people being people. So, and one thing you can do with still life is you can treat your subjects as portraits of those objects. You can take a portrait of a glass or an egg or anything, and say an awful lot about it by how you light it and what you do with it and how you pose it. And so we're going to be doing a lot of stuff around those single objects, groups of objects. One of the things we're going to be talking about are how you can do all this stuff in your own home without having to have a large studio set up with all kinds of fancy lights. All you need is a window and a table and something to photograph, and you're good. So it's going to be a class for everyone. I'm going to be doing some of my demos using a large format view camera in class. But welcome to use whatever they want, from a phone on up to a high-end or to a view camera, whatever you like. This works. As long as you can control your medium, you can do anything you want with it. So the images that I have here, and I apologize in advance for the color balance being a little funky on the pictures that I sent, Palladium prints do not reproduce well digitally. They never have. So, but this is part of a series that I've been working on of personal work, going back through my travels over the last 20 years and pulling out images that said something to me, that resonated emotionally, and making Palladium prints out of them. I have over 100 prints made now in this series. All of them, not all, almost all of them started on film, most of them on medium format. I'm scanning those negatives, producing a digitally enlarged negative for making these alternative process prints. When I teach the Introduction to Platinum Palladium class, I go over how to do that digital enlargement process so that you can work from any source material, whether it is film, small format film, digital, an iPhone shot, doesn't matter. You can end up with historic processes as your final print. So we go over that. And this image is, okay, and this one is,
Right.
yeah, so yeah, this is the fountain at the Châtelet metro stop in Paris. The fountain was built to honor Napoleon and his Egyptian conquests. And I just loved the moment that I got where the sun was coming over the edge of the fountain and going through the water. Next image. Next. Next image.
It's up, Scott.
Hello?
Hey, Scott, I think you might have had some technical
Yeah, okay.
difficulties.
My connection is, yeah, my connection is also being a little flaky too. This is the Nereid monument. It's a Greek temple that's in the British Museum. There's I guess a common thread amongst these two anyways, that there's motion involved in otherwise static subjects. So it's something I've noticed that I've been looking for without even realizing I was doing it. And now that I'm aware of it, I do more of it, but so.
Thank you, Scott.
Welcome.
Next, we have Bruce.
Hi, group. Can you guys hear my audio okay?
Hey, you're there.
All right, very good. Yeah, I'm actually in Photoworks proper tonight in the building. Today is Tuesday, is Advanced Darkroom Night, which is one of several classes that I teach here in person. I teach the Advanced Darkroom. I teach an intro to dark black and white darkroom as well. And in the winter session, I did 2 workshops. I'm doing 2. I just finished this weekend a large format view camera 2-day hands-on workshop, which was really fun. We had 8 people and a bunch of cameras, and we basically turned Photoworks into basically a still life studio with 2 big backgrounds and a bunch of equipment. And we had lighting in here, and I think we had 5 or 6 4x5 view cameras and 1 8x10, and we really went to town. It was really great. The other workshop I teach is I'm going to be doing a lighting workshop on how to use essentially like everything from small on-camera strobes all the way up to the state-of-the-art studio strobe. So we're going to be doing that. That's a 2-day event coming up in towards the end of February. It'll be 2 consecutive Saturdays. I think there's still some room in that one. When we get into the next round, the spring session, I'll be doing the large format workshop again, as well as the intro to photography, to darkroom, and the advanced darkroom classes. My image, which I guess you could scroll to now, It's actually rectangular. It's actually a 4x5, was the original, it was a negative. It sort of covers pretty much everything that I teach. So obviously this is a digital version of what is a traditional silver gelatin black and white photograph on double weight fiber-based paper, Ilford multigrade warm tone, that was toned with the selenium toner, and it's actually mounted in a 24x28 frame. This is the only image I was able to get organized for the show. This is some of my most recent work that I really like, and it sort of covers, it's meaningful for me in a very personal way because of some pretty deep, intense, like personal issues and problems that I had to deal with over the course of the holidays and the winter. And it was one of the last, like,
Go back in.
really, what's that? I'm sorry. I thought I heard somebody talking. Are we good?
Go ahead.
Good.
Yeah.
I think that was an accident.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I didn't mean, so yeah, this was a studio image. So kind of covers, I shot it with a 4x5 camera. I used Tri-X Pro 320, obviously, and then I enlarged, it was lit with a single strobe and a reflector against a black background. So pretty simple, straightforward, but I think it's actually, if you look carefully, you'll notice one of the petals at the top is not touching the flower, it's separated. It sort of looks like it's flying away. It's actually upside down, but I did that intentionally because I think it just looks like I wanted to call the piece Ascension or something kind of preposterous like that. But I decided to call it Sunflower Study number 2. It's part of a series of 4. So this covers sort of like my large format camera work, my studio lighting, and my black and white darkroom. So I thought it was quite a fitting image for kind of everything that I do. My teaching style is pretty much like for the intro class, it's kind of like boot camp. I want everybody by the end of the first class is going to walk out of here with a print. That's my goal. Everybody's sort of like, okay, everybody put your negative in the carrier. Everybody turn on your enlarger. The advanced class is different. It's more, I let people kind of come to me when they're ready, when they're looking for guidance or they're ready to grow, or they're looking to expand their vision a little bit. But for the most part, I kind of just let people print and try to just, learn from their mistakes and try to refine their technique. That's kind of it for me. Hope to see some of you guys here in person at Photoworks. I feel like I'm in here, 5 days a week lately. So it's good to see. I've seen some of your faces recently, so it's been really good to see everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Next, we have Stephen Greenberg.
And here I am. I don't know why I'm not coming up in the side box there. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can see
There you go.
Yeah.
So I'm Steve Greenberg, and I am different in background than almost anyone else who's been speaking tonight because my background is not in photography or in the arts, but as a historian, I worked in history and sociology, specializing in the history of printing and publishing in the Western world, which led me to librarianship. And I spent the last 30 years curating a history of medicine collection, the largest of its kind at the National Library of Medicine in Bethesda. And my approach in this course, I don't know where the word take came in there. Okay, Sophie, but the point of this course, you can do the history of photography as the history of great photographers, and that works at one level. You can do it as the history of technology and have fun with all the great processes that Mac and Scott are talking about. Or you can do the history of photography in terms of different aesthetic movements, which are usually connected in some way to the social milieu in which they grew up. But what I'm hoping to do here is to bring them all together, to show that the person, the technology, the politics, the aesthetic sensibility of the time have to come together to create photography. Think for a minute what Cartier-Bresson's work would have looked like if he'd been alive in 1870, had to use wet plate cameras that weighed 40 pounds. Or on the other end, think of him alive today, walking around the streets of Paris with an iPhone. And that's what I'm hoping to bring together. The course is designed to be done on site. And again, I'm only seeing Frank, okay? Can anyone see me?
I can see
Yes,
you.
we could see you.
Okay, so
I can see.
I'm hoping to do this on site at Photoworks, and that way I can bring in some little artifacts like this guy here. This is a teeny weeny by the standards lithographic stone, okay, from about 1925. And this is how you produced photographs in your books at that point, okay? So if we can't be on site, then I don't have to haul this puppy out to Glenico, but I'm perfectly willing to do so. But the plan is to bring it all together, as it were, so that you can sit there and understand that photographers are helped or hindered by their processes, by their technology, by their personal situation, and by the world around them. And in particular, I hope to spend a moment or two talking about how photography as a medium has both franchised and disenfranchised groups by race, by gender, by sexual orientation. So we'll squeeze in an awful lot. Sophie, if you could move to my first picture. So this doesn't really have a lot to do with the course per se, but it's historical, so I'll go with it. It's kind of a fantasy on a document that I had access to for a while from 1485. This is a manuscript, it's hand-drawn, and it's called an articella. And articella in this particular perspective was the name that was used for a series of medical books produced in the late medieval or early modern times. Medicine was considered to be the little art, that's why it's an articella. And what you had in these books was basically the 14th or 15th century equivalent of the Norton Guide to English Literature. So an articella would have a little bit of Hippocrates, a little bit of Galen, a little bit of Aristotle, and the selection of the pieces would be more or less uniform. But since they were hand done, everyone was a little bit different. This is one I actually was able to help purchase for the National Library of Medicine's collection. And what makes it kind of fun is even though this is 30 years after the invention of printing in the West, it's hand done. And you would expect this to be in Latin or in Greek, but in fact, it's in Catalan, which is the variation of Spanish spoken in historical Catalonia. And this book itself was produced in Barcelona. And then I just kind of went to town on it. As some of you know, I've never met a slider I didn't want to push all the way to the right. And Sophie, if I have the next picture. And this is somewhat newer. It's a page from a 1784 epistolary novel. In other words, it's a novel made up of a bunch of letters from one person to another and back again. And this is a letter to Miss Jenny. And what I love about this in particular is the typography of the time. It's not a misprint, that's called a long S. And if you've ever seen those funny little facsimile copies of the Bill of Rights you used to be able to buy at the National Archives, there are long S's there as well. And again, digitally photographed and pushing the sliders. And I just think it's fun. And Sophie, I'm done.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll move on to Rob.
Hi, everybody. Before we start talking about my classes, a little bit about me, my background in photography. more or less started when I was a kid. I actually won in middle school. I went to the Indiana State Fair where I won only a red ribbon, but a red ribbon in the state fair. But my background basically is journalism. But in school, I created my own degree where I called it visual anthropology, which is actually a form of anthropology, but not taught where I was going to school, where I combined art classes, journalism classes, and anthropology, because my ultimate goal for myself was to study culture. And that's really what I do, although I make a living more or less being a journalist. Can we look at the image, Sophie? So the two classes that I teach the most and the ones that I have coming up in the summer are of landscape, or I call it narrative landscape, which is a class about not just creating a beautiful landscape photograph, but creating a series of landscape images that actually construct a narrative. I'm less worried about, in both of my classes, the street photography, which I'll talk about in a second, and the narrative landscape class, I'm less worried about making one beautiful image, and I'm more concerned about making a collection of images that make a statement. But also, I'm less worried about you creating an image that you think is what is supposed to be a good image, but you looking deep within yourself and taking the pictures that's right for you. It's not about what do I want to show people about this space, but it's more about why am I in this space and what is it important to me about this? Because photography is from the inside out. And that's what I try to work. I work very hard with my students. I try to give everybody a little bit of individual one-on-one time during my classes. And that way you can develop the style that is personal to you and not trying to mimic what a good photograph is supposed to be. We've all seen Ansel Adams photographs. We're all tired of Ansel Adams photographs. What you need to do is learn to create an image that is personal to you. And that's what I really, really strive to work with the people do. So I push people to work out of their comfort zones and get them to work in ways that are new to them. And that opens up doors of exploration. I do the same thing with the street photography class. Now that has been a little hard in pandemic times. Nobody really wants to go out onto the streets, and I even don't want to necessarily unless somebody's paying me to do it. But I do still go out and do it. But it's a joy, and there are skills and there are tricks to learn how to photograph in public, and you learn to be confident about it. I see a lot of people they're very shy and they're very timid, and that sort of body language conveys to people that you don't trust in your own abilities to work well in public like this. And that's something that we can get over. There are ways to do it. So the thing that I'm ultimately, that I think is most important for people is to learn to find your own vision and to find the way that you are comfortable photographing, regardless if it's landscapes, if it's people, whatever you're doing, your own way of doing it is the most important and not trying to mimic someone else. And that is basically how I try to conduct my classes. That is it. I only have the one image also. It's a little bit of both, a landscape and a little bit of street photography.
Right.
Well, thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Next, we have Karen.
Oh my. I feel like I do a lot of standing in front of people in my world of photography, and most of them are 44 students at the field school. I love designing assignments and also classes. I like to think about that a lot. I think in the images that I selected here for this exhibit are sort of a reflection of my kind of mood, and some of the things that I'm doing is spending a lot of time when I have it to go through old work and kind of decide whether I really want it as, or if I have sort of gotten tired of some of them. And in the end, going through a number of images in the last week or 10 days, I decided to go back to where I really felt that I had an opportunity to pursue something. I had 5 trips to Cuba, and the end result was a book, and I never thought I would be doing a photo book. And I just think that I'm kind of in a place where I'm evaluating a lot of things, and some of it is just what part of photography do you really love? And it's pretty equal between teaching and making photographs, but I always started out as wanting to see what was on the streets and what was outside of my environment, and just was lucky to be able to go to Cuba that many times and to meet Ernesto Gazan and to go with my really good friend Elsie. And so I decided to put these two images in, and of course the Cuba trips ended up in a book, which I never thought I would do, and not sure whether I'll do again, but I just am in that sort of reflective time frame right now. And the main things that have come out of those thoughts are that I really do love black and white film photography. It doesn't matter how fancy the digital is or how many classes I would take. I still need to be in the dark room and use an enlarger. And I've decided I'm old enough to say that's what I want, and that's where I'm going to stay. And I don't feel the necessity to buy anything where I have to sit at a desk. I prefer to be moving around in the dark room and being out on the street and using a square format. So I'm not very exploring like all of you are with your different methods, but I feel like I have the opportunity to see so many of you through Photoworks, designing classes and coming up with really challenging materials and interesting things. So I want to use this time to say thank you to all of you for all that you give to Photoworks, and want you to know that I and the Photoworks board really appreciate your energy and your sticking with us and being really the voice for Photoworks. That's all, I think.
Okay. Just want to give a second to this image as well.
That's wonderful.
What classes are you teaching, Karen?
Oh, let's see. I'm concentrating on kids classes in the summer. I'm teaching a class that's, I want to teach a class that's on abstract expressionism. I really do like that. And I like to sort of change what I'm teaching. I love teaching the visual poetry class, and I would like to, I'll probably offer that in the fall, but I want to concentrate on getting youth back into Photoworks this summer. And I think we probably will be able to do that. And I already have a couple of students from the field school that are dying to intern at Photoworks this summer. So I think it'll be another focus on youth and try to keep them engaged at Photoworks.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Here's Gail. Oh, Gail, I think you need to unmute.
Okay, hi, everybody. I've been teaching at Photoworks for almost close to 40 years now, and I've taught basic, intermediate classes. I've done a landscape shooting class down at the C&O Canal in different locations. And I've also offered a class that deals with using and combining multiple images. I've always been interested in that. I don't have any upcoming classes in the spring, and I snuck into this show anyhow.
You're welcome.
But I've been busy coordinating the exhibitions at Photoworks and attempting to archive my work and preparing for a show up in the Parkview Gallery this spring. And Sophie, you want to just go ahead? And this image was made, I think it was about 2012. There was a house in my neighborhood that had burned down, and it was the same model house as I lived in. It was a terrifying thought. So I had to go over and see it. And I was using my Canon 5D camera at the time and shot a lot of images. And before I was finished, I took out my iPhone and shot with my PhotoSynth app, and ended up, that was my favorite of the images. So that's what this is. It was made with the PhotoSynth app, which I can no longer use on my new phone. It won't let me do it. And most of my work over the years has been very personal. I'm not a documentary photographer. I'm not a street photographer, although I have done street photography over the years, mainly in black and white. But can we move on? So that was this one, and it was a rather disturbing image. And here I was, again, putting images together. In around 2000, I started to transition from using my Palladium medium format camera to a digital, and I truly didn't have much respect for digital technology at that time. I was using a little Leica Deluxe 3 sort of a point and shoot camera. So I started to scan objects. Mostly at the beginning was because my mom had died and was very frustrated. I couldn't make any more portraits of her. So I started to scan her things. And this one it's black and white negative, which I repeated a few times to reminiscent of a film strip. And then the center was just her coat and this is actually in the middle is a picture of her hat and coat lying in the ground. Now, a lot of when scanning objects like this, it was kind of interesting that they became very, very textural. A lot of times when I showed a print, somebody would like reach over to touch it because it just looked like it was so three-dimensional. So, and that one, this was an earlier one, actually. It was around 2008. And I think perhaps in the fall, I will put on a class in combining images, sort of collage, multiple imaging. So.
Very nice.
Amazing.
Okay, that's
Thank
it.
you, Gail. David?
You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Listening to all the photographers that have gone in front of me, I think I probably fall into the category of the utility photographer, the utility player. I teach, let me start off. When I moved here from St. Louis with an engineering degree, I fell in with some artists from GW who were printmakers. And they made all kinds of prints. They made etchings, they made engravings, they made lithographs from stone. They just had all different ways to express themselves. And that sort of stuck with me from the very beginning. And I figured I don't have time or 4 years worth of money to get a degree in art. So I bought a camera. And I found out that the camera was just as much art as what they were doing on stone lithographs. So over the years, without any teacher per se, in photography, I sort of, I don't know how you say, not figured out, but I sort of came into different ways to make prints from either negatives from a camera or digital images from a camera. And from those things that I learned that you can make a photograph look different many different ways. And one of those ways is change the papers. I teach a class in printing photographs on a variety of papers, some of which are laid papers from France or Italy, and they're actually cotton papers, traditional laid papers with texture. I have photographs on metallic paper, not the metallic paper that you buy today from most of the big paper makers, but from papers that are actually silver to begin with, no white, just a silver piece of paper or a gold piece of paper And when you print, you have black and what you have black and gold or black and silver. And I think these are useful for a lot of commercial photography, but I have some photographs that I really, really like that are printed on papers like that. Sophie, if you go to the next picture, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Okay, this is an example. This is printed on laid paper from France. It's very textured. It doesn't have a coating on it. It's not photography paper, but the image was kind of gnarly. And I wanted to print it in a way that it wasn't going to show just a shiny, high textured, sharp image. I wanted to print it in a way that would reflect that this old tree has been around for ages and ages and ages. So I printed it on French Arches paper, and it's cotton. And I wanted to frame it a different way. So I sat it on a piece of laid paper, cotton paper from France that was a different color. And then you can see the four vertical lines where I sewed the paper from the photograph onto the paper behind it. So it's actually 6 pieces, 6 things underneath the glass within the mat that it's on. And I really like this way. It gives me a wonderful option for viewing and interpreting this photograph in different ways. I've also printed it on gray laid paper, cotton paper, and beige cotton paper, Italian paper, French paper, and the texture supports and enhances, to my knowledge, my way of thinking, the texture of the photograph. I do this a lot. Next, please. All right, I do this a lot too. I really like this. This is a photograph printed on paper vellum, not vellum that you'd find that's made from an animal skin or something. This is paper vellum. It's very smoky when you look through it, but when you push it against something like text, it immediately becomes sharp. So I take these photographs and I turn them over and I gild them on the back side with gold leaf. And then when I turn it back over, because the gold touches the paper vellum, it shines. And these were Dobras that I shot in a store, a music store, guitar store in St. Louis. And I think they're called vibraphones. And I got I did it this way with the gold background to get the metallic surfaces of the vibraphones in a way that I could not get on a simple photograph of a simple piece of paper. So I teach this too, but basically it's just thinking about different ways that you can enhance or interpret your photograph. It expands your way of thinking and the ways that you can go about expressing a photograph. I also teach a course in bookmaking, an online course for making books online. There you go. There are many actually websites that you can download, upload your photographs and make a book. And I teach how to use how to use a representative software for that online. And I teach how to not design, but arrange a book. What works with what, since you only see two photographs at a time, you have to sort of make provisions from the beginning to the end of the book, how the book will look its best. And I teach this course backwards. I teach the course by showing the mistakes I've made. And I tell them, try not to do this. And it seems to work really well. because I end up with students who make fewer mistakes than I started off making. And the last class I make seems to be suffering from the pandemic, but I teach making handmade books from start, from printing the pages are folded, they're printed on both sides, folded in half, so you end up with 4 pages of a book. And I make signatures of 3 sheets, and you end up with a whole bunch of photographs. And then I teach how to make cut the hardboard for the books and cover it with whatever you want to cover it with. A lot of times I cover them with a photograph and a leather binding. And the class works really well. I like teaching it. It's creative, and the students walk out with a book, and that's very pleasing. So those are the classes that I teach.
Awesome. Is that last one in person or online, David?
The last one is in person. I think that's why it's suffering. It's 6, I've had 6 people around a table with their photographs and using the one set of tools that I have. And I think people sort of understand that may be a problem. The online class of bookmaking is made for an online class. When I teach the bookmaking class, the actual bookmaking class, the most attentive time that I have is when people look at my toolbox, the bookmaker's toolbox. It's got very fun tools in it, and you don't see them other places.
Nice.
And that's it. Those are the 3 classes I teach.
Thank you. And next, Tom Slider. He's not here today, but he has an accordion book that is presented at the gallery right now. And I'll read these 2 paragraphs. This image and the accordion book are part of my continuing aviation series, in which I try to capture the inherent artistry of these machines and the talents of the men and women who design, build, and fly them. I have chosen to work in black and white for the subject, as it provides a better medium to concentrate one's attentions to shapes, lines, and textures. Photoworks, through its classes and coffee and critique sessions, has provided an ideal venue in which to exchange ideas with fellow photographers, receive constructive criticism on projects and images, and explore new approaches to my photographic vision. And Gail mentioned this before, but Tom has been putting up all of our in-person shows as of late, which is a big deal. So we are very grateful for him. And this is also a good reminder that you can come to the Photoworks studio and see all of this work up on the walls. Or in this case, on a stand.
On a shelf.
A shelf. Okay. Frank?
I know that guy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hi, everyone. I'm first of all absolutely thrilled that I'm back teaching in person. I'm one of those folks. I always say I teach the way I cook, which is hands-on, and I'm not really that great doing Zoom classes, but I am delighted that one new offering that I've offered just a few weeks ago, and which I will be offering again in the probably not until the fall, is a portraiture class called La Faccia, meaning in Italian, the face. I'm half Italian. And had a wonderful time with that. I'm limiting my classes in person to 5 people. And this makes for, I think, a very comfortable atmosphere. But in terms of what I'll be doing as we get into the spring, it's interesting to me to listen to everybody else talk about different techniques and things that kind of ring their chimes. One of the things that I found fascinating, because I first came to Photoworks as a student a very long time ago. And of course, now I teach. It's the same thing that happened to me at the Maine Photographic Workshops. I went there as a student and wound up teaching there decades later. But one of the things about Glenico Park is the absolute beauty of this place. I mean, it is stunning. And a class that I really love teaching is the Glenico Night Photography Workshop. And this is one example of it. This is called Cuddle Up in Red Neon. And one of the things I love to do with folks is to teach them to use their cameras in ways that they had not really thought about using them before. That could be something as mundane as using an incredibly long exposure on a tripod and getting something like this. It could be something like working at night, looking at some of the fantastic neon at Glenico and zooming with your lens during a long exposure, popping a flash, doing all kinds of things that you might think are not necessarily something you've done in the past. But once you've done it, I think it opens up some compartments in your mind and allows you to be a more creative photographer. That's one of the things I'll be doing in the spring. Another thing, though, too, I remember listening to Joe Cameron talk about, from his background as a painter, looking at photos to be representative of different objects. So they mean different things to different people. Well, as a writer, I do the same thing. And one of the new classes that I'll be teaching in the spring is called Words and Pictures. And I want to just say here what it is: a creative exercise using your own words or phrases to inspire your photos. What that means is that my students are going to be coming in. We're going to be talking a lot back and forth and talking about emotions, things that create feelings in them. And I'm going to try to impress upon them the idea of turning those mental ideas, those mental images, into physical images as photographs. Is it going to work? I hope so. If it doesn't, I think it'll still be a learning experience, and I'm looking very much forward to it. I'm also doing a class on flash photography demystified. One of the things that probably opened more doors for me in terms of creativity was being able to not be tied to the tyranny of the on-camera flash. As soon as I learned about radio remotes and using multiple different flashes, a whole new world opened to me, not only in portraiture, but also in documentary photography, which I've spent the better part of my most recent career doing. So that flash photography demystified, I think, should be fun for folks because it doesn't require any previous experience. I am happy to walk people through the very first elementary steps, because to me as a teacher, that's one of the most amazing things to see someone do some of these things that they feel very tentative about, and then ultimately say, oh my God, look at that picture. And I'm right behind them saying, you're not kidding, look at that, let's do it again. Finally, the other class that I am hoping to be teaching in the spring is my East Wing field trip. Some of you may know, I will segue into that in a minute. This is a photo diptych that I made after my wife and I finished work on our book on Venice, Serenissima Venice in Winter. During our book tour, we were in Venice in May, and this is one of those gifts of the photo gods. I was working with an ultra wide angle lens on my Leica M6, and I made this one picture in Piazza San Marco. You see these tourists are shielding their heads from the sun, and of course, because it's so wide angle, you have the perspective is all skewed. The very next picture is one I got out of Vaporetto, and I am looking at the Grand Canal, and you have the same similar skewed perspective. When I looked at this, I said, my God, these pictures work so well as a diptych, and they actually were made one right after the other. So when I printed this picture, I made sure to keep the sprocket holes there so you could tell that this is not something where I said, oh, let me take this picture from 3 years ago, it works so well here. So this to me is one of the gifts of the photo gods, and I'm grateful for it. But finally, I just want to say that the last thing I do is the East Wing field trip. Those of you who looked at the paper recently have noticed that the East Wing just announced that they are closing until mid-June, June 22nd, to replace the atrium, the beautiful atrium there. So what I'm probably going to do with that class is we'll meet outside the East Wing make a lot of pictures, will shoot inside the West Wing, which is also a absolute garden of delights. And then I'm thinking of actually doing some outside work with some of the magnificent sculpture in and around Capitol Hill. So that's a kind of street photography that I like to do. And given the way things are right now, it's a kind of still it's not all that people would not have to be all that apprehensive about doing it. So I'm looking forward to a very full spring, and really looking forward to a very full in-person spring. And I couldn't be happier being back in harness at Photoworks. So I thank you all very, very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank.
Okay.
And we have Emily next. And I believe Emily will close the night.
Mhm.
Okay, well, first of all, I look a little crazy right now, and I feel like I owe you guys an explanation for that. I was a little delayed riding my bike downstairs, and I don't know if any of you guys take these Peloton classes, but I got high-fived by Feel My Glutes. So that gave me like an extra boost of energy, and I rode too long, and then I didn't go and get ready before this Zoom. So I'm kind of embarrassed to come off of that video.
But you look like your portrait. That's just like your portrait. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's appropriate. Nicely
I
done.
know. I'm going to change my username though from emily.rose.dc to like Feel My Glutes is a great username. And then I think the second thing I wanted to say is that hearing you guys all talk about your classes, it's making me really want to take some more classes at Photoworks. I'm realizing how much there is to learn and how many exciting ways you can go with these classes. And so anyway, thank you to everybody who went before me, because you've gotten me really excited about photography and Photoworks. I told Sophie I was just going to say a couple of words about the teen photography classes. One of the classes I have really loved teaching is the street photography class for teens. It's on hiatus because of COVID, but I was really glad to see that some classes are going to be offered over the summer. And just teaching teens is really satisfying and really fun because they know what they like, so just looking at photographs with teens, they know what they like. And when you first ask them, like, what do you like about this image? Usually they just look at you and they're like, duh, what's wrong with you? They don't have a lot to say. But if you really push them, they first kind of focus on the subject matter. And then you get into a conversation with them about how the images make them feel. And it's really amazing because they have just sort of insights that have not been shaped yet by looking at too much or hearing too much about photography. They have just really insightful things to say about how photographs make them feel. And then in terms of teaching photography, it's a matter of just talking to them about what are the things that are making the photograph effective in evoking emotion from you, and how can you bring that into this image that you're working on. So it's really, really fun to do the teen classes. I really love it. And I guess if you want to just show the two images I chose two images that I think illustrate how much I love the conversation with teenagers. These two photographs were taken in 2020, so we were in COVID and in quarantine. It was a really, really heavy time. It was a really heavy time for everybody. It was especially a heavy time for teenagers. It was an excruciating time for Black teenage boys. And Corbin went out with me. We took a bunch of pictures, and he was just so confident, and he had so much lightness and just a sense of himself that I loved doing these photos of him. And so I wanted to include them in the show because I thought that they they were representative of what I love most about working with teenagers. He's just completely open and just a wonderful person. And I had a great time working with him.
Those are gorgeous.
So that is it.
Mhm.
I don't have more to say except that now I need to find time to take all of your classes.
Well, thank you, everybody. This has been a great night. I also would like to take a bunch of classes. Yeah, so please, if you're not on our newsletter list already, please go onto our website and sign up, and you'll get updates about the upcoming classes. There's still a few winter classes left to be taken, and then we will have the spring and summer schedule published real soon. So thank you.
Sophie, can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Hi, everybody. Just I want to take 2 minutes of your time to thank you, Photoworks, for this initiative. It was wonderful to see teachers together talking about their classes. And really, it gave me a sense of community, which beyond teaching, that's what you're giving us, a sense of community, a sense that this is home for many of us folks that are continue learning. So thank you. Great initiative. Great idea.
Thank you very much.
Adorable.
Sophie, thank you very much for
Thank
this.
you.
This is amazing.
Oh, great.
Sophie, you do great work. Thank you.
Absolutely.
We just have to get her up to Photoworks. We have to get her inside the space.
I know. For those of you that don't know, I work remotely and I've only been up to Photoworks once, actually. So now I'm dying to take a lot of these in-person classes. Well, I'll have to make it work.
That's it. Yep.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for participating and bringing your work in on time, and go and see the gallery. This looks
It looks
terrific.
great. It really looks great.
Yeah.
Looking forward tomorrow, I think.
Hey, come in on Sundays as well. Come and have conversations with everybody on Sundays during the open darkroom. We'd love to have you all there, please.
Yeah, that's right. I was there.
Yeah, it's
Recently. It was great.
I have to brag that I'm so glad that Peter just spoke up. Peter and Bruce have totally transformed Photoworks. There is not an unorganized spot. There are nothing falling out of the closet. The back room that had 4 enlargers stacked on top of themselves is a place we could rent out. Every single enlarger station is immaculate, and there are 12 that are perfect. I am so grateful and thankful for the two of you. You've made me want to go back to Photoworks because it's such a tidy place, and my house is not quite that tidy. So
Okay, we can do your house too, Karen. Anytime you want. Thank you guys for the opportunity. Karen and everybody, really, thank you all for the opportunity for letting me get in there and help out and help Bruce and everyone. I greatly appreciate it. And I greatly appreciate being in the class with all of you. You guys are all amazing. I've admired you forever. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right.
Good night.
Take care, everybody.
All right, thanks. Take care, everybody.
Hi, good to see everybody.